The first thing he heard was not a beep, not a voice he knew, not a sound from Earth. It was something strange, deep, and echoing, like someone speaking through water. He opened his eyes slowly, his vision blurry, lights above him glowing with soft blue colors. He blinked once, twice, and then saw something standing beside his bed. It was tall, thin, with skin like silver stone and eyes glowing softly like moons. The thing leaned closer and spoke again, its voice now clearer. Careful, human. It said in perfect English, "You've been in a coma for over 20 years. He stared at the alien creature. Thinking it was a dream, he tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He reached up weakly, his fingers trembling like leaves in wind. "Where am I?" He whispered. "You're safe," the alien said calmly. "You're on board Medical Station Oral, orbiting the star system you once called Zeta 9. That didn't help. His memory was foggy, like old paper soaked in water. The last thing he could remember clearly was entering a spaceship, Earth soldiers around him, laughter, then nothing. "What year is it?" he asked slowly. The alien paused, looking uncomfortable. "It's year 78 of the Galactic Peace Accord," it answered, "by your Earth calendar." The year 2479. His heart sank. He had been asleep for 2 decades. Everything and everyone he knew might be gone. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body, and he gasped. "Easy," the alien said, pressing a glowing panel on the wall. "Your muscles are weak. You need recovery." The human looked down at himself. His body was thinner, pale, wires attached to his chest and arms, but something felt off. He moved his hand and noticed it moved too fast, too smooth. "Why does my hand feel strange?" he asked, frowning. The alien didn't answer right away. Instead, it turned to a floating screen and tapped it. "You were injured in the accident. That caused your coma," it said finally. "We repaired what we could." "What does that mean?" he demanded, voice growing louder. "It means you are part machine now," the alien replied quietly. "Cybernetic support was necessary to save your life." He stared at his hands again, heart pounding. Was he even human anymore? The alien stepped back and gave him space. "I am Supervisor Relin," it said. "I have watched over you since you were brought here." "Brought by who?" he asked. "By your people," Relin said. "But they never came back." The silence in the room became heavy. He tried to think clearly, to remember why he was even out here in space. "Was I in the military?" he asked suddenly. Relin hesitated. "Again, yes," it said slowly. "But your full records are locked." "Locked by who?" "By order of High Command." He clenched his jaw. Something was wrong here, something they weren't telling him. If he was just a soldier, why would his files be locked? Why would his body be part machine now? And where were the others who brought him? He turned toward the wall, spotting a reflective panel. He saw his face older, sharper, with a small metal line running behind his ear. His chest rose and fell fast, panic creeping in. "I want answers," he said firmly. "I need to know what happened." Relin looked at him with those glowing eyes, full of something between sorrow and fear. "You will know in time," it said. But not all truths bring peace. That only made him more afraid. What kind of truth needed hiding for 20 years? He lay back, exhausted, his mind racing. This place looked like a hospital, but it felt more like a prison. He noticed there were no windows, no signs of Earth, nothing familiar. He closed his eyes, hoping sleep would come. But behind his eyelids, strange images started to flash fire, explosions, a woman screaming his name, and something else, something deep in the dark, calling to him. When he opened his eyes again, Relin was still there, watching him closely. "Rest," it said gently. "You'll need strength soon." The human didn't answer, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had changed forever, and whatever happened before, whatever they were hiding, it wasn't over yet. He pressed his palm against the cold wall, hoping it would open or shift. But it stayed still, unmoved. The room was quiet. Too quiet. except for the soft hum that came from above. He had spent 3 days inside this clean, smooth place they called a medical room, but it felt more like a cage. There were no windows, no clocks, and no familiar sounds, just glowing walls, quiet footsteps, and Rellen's careful voice. He watched. The door again, narrow and silver, with no visible handle. He had asked to go outside, just once, but Rellen's answer had been soft and strange. "It's better if you stay here until you're stronger," the alien had said, but it didn't feel like the truth. He walked slowly around the room, dragging the strange body that now belonged to him, feeling light yet heavy at the same time. His arms worked, but they moved with a smoothness that felt unnatural, like the strength inside wasn't only his. He stared at his hand again and flexed the fingers, too fast, too sharp, too exact. He couldn't deny it anymore. They had changed him on the 4th day. He tried again. "I want to see the sky," he said to Rellen, who stood near the door with a device in hand. Rellen didn't answer at first, just tapped the glowing screen slowly. The silence stretched too long. "I haven't seen stars in 20 years, he added, trying to sound calm. Rellen looked up and gave a small nod, but the eyes said something else: worry, maybe fear. "The sky is complicated right now," Rellen replied gently. "Let's focus on recovery first." He clenched his jaw and turned away. They were hiding something. He knew it, deep in his chest, like a cold rock that wouldn't melt. Later that day, while pretending to sleep, he heard 2 alien voices near the wall behind his bed. It wasn't Rellen's voice this time. It was sharper, firmer. "His vitals are rising faster than predicted." One said, "The machine parts are adapting too quickly. He must not remember." The other whispered, "If he does, the council will panic." He held his breath, his eyes still closed, his heart pounding like a drum. "We should move him," the first voice said. "Put him somewhere more secure." "Not yet," the second replied. "Supervisor Rellen still believes he can be guided." Then the voices faded, footsteps disappeared, and the soft hum returned. He waited 5 long minutes before sitting up. His mind was racing now. Not only were they hiding the sky from him, they were hiding the truth. What had they done to him? Why was he dangerous? He stood up and walked to the wall again, pressing every edge, every seam, trying to find something loose, something open. The wall near the bed clicked, just slightly, and slid open, revealing a dark, narrow space between the walls. He didn't hesitate. He slipped inside the gap, breathing quietly. The space tight and cold around him. There were cables, strange blinking lights, and the sound of distant alien footsteps above. He crawled forward, following the sound of voices, hoping to learn something, anything. He found a small slit in the metal, just wide enough to see into a nearby room. Inside stood 3 aliens in armor, with glowing patterns on their shoulders. A large screen floated in the center, showing what looked like Earth, but it was covered in strange lines and moving red dots. "Are the old Earth zones still under quarantine?" One alien asked. "Yes," said another. "Radiation is stable, but the core signal remains active." "And the human?" the third asked, turning to the screen. "Does he still believe Earth exists?" "Rellen is keeping him calm," the first answered. "But the truth will surface soon. Then we must prepare," the third said coldly. "If he remembers Project Obsidian, we'll all be held responsible." His breath caught. Project Obsidian. The name hit something deep inside his brain, like a locked door trembling under pressure. He slid back through the passage quietly, returned to his room, and sat on the bed like nothing happened. When Rellen returned with food, he smiled and said nothing. He had learned enough, they thought. He was just a patient, just a machine part, just a leftover. But they were wrong. Something inside him was waking up, something even they feared. He was no longer just the man who woke from a coma. He was part of something bigger, and the truth was coming for them all. He smiled for the first time since waking up, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile someone wears when they know something no one else does. Rellen walked into the room with a calm expression. holding a smooth tray with small food cubes that smelled like warm bread. But he wasn't hungry, not anymore. He was hungry for truth, not food. He accepted the tray with a nod and sat quietly, pretending to be tired, pretending to be obedient. Relin spoke softly, as always. "You are healing well, faster than expected." He nodded. "That's good. Your motor functions are 87% restored," Relin added. "We may begin outside walks in a few days." His eyes lit up slightly. "Outside where?" "Training halls, artificial sky, nothing real," Relin answered, as if reading his thoughts. He didn't push, not yet. Instead, he let the silence grow between them, long enough to let Relin relax. When the alien turned to check a screen on the wall, he asked, carefully, "What is Project Obsidian?" The screen froze. Relin turned slowly, his face unreadable. "Where did you hear that name?" The alien asked, voice low and still. "I saw it in a dream," he lied smoothly. "I think I was part of it." Relin's eyes narrowed slightly. But he said nothing for several seconds. Finally, he turned back to the screen and pressed a few buttons. "You were involved?" "Yes," he said quietly. "But the files are sealed even from me." "Why?" he asked. "Because it ended badly," Relin said. "And it wasn't supposed to exist." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Tell me something real, Relin, not soft lies, not empty words." The alien looked at him for a long time, then walked over and sat beside the bed. "There are things your people created, things we tried to forget," Relin said. "Obsidian was one of them." "What was it?" "A weapon," Relin whispered. "A living weapon. Part flesh, part machine. Something that could survive anything." He felt cold inside. Because suddenly it all made sense. His strange body, his fast recovery, the locked files. He was one of them. "I was the weapon," he said, his voice low. "I don't know," Relin replied. "Maybe you were the pilot, or the key, or the fail-safe." He stood up, shaking his head. "That's why no one came back for me," he muttered. "They didn't want the weapon." To wake up, Relin looked down, ashamed. "They said Earth fell during the final cycle of the war." He stopped, his heart frozen in place. "Fell?" "Your world was hit by something," Relin explained. "A machine burst, or a signal bomb. No one knows what truly happened. And you just left me here," he said, not to Relin, but to the memory of those who abandoned him that night. He didn't sleep. He waited until the lights dimmed and Relin left the room. Then he moved to the panel behind the bed. He found the same hidden gap, the same tight passage. But this time, he went deeper, past the command rooms, into the lower levels. He followed blinking signs and alien script, trusting his new body to guide him. Soon, he reached a storage deck filled with strange pods and floating screens. He heard voices again, 3 aliens in long robes, standing around a floating monitor. "He's asking too many questions," one said. "We should notify the high table. If he remembers his training, it's over," another replied. His brain was designed to store code military secrets. Buried under fake memories, he froze, heart pounding, his dreams flashes of war, screams. Explosions weren't dreams, they were memories. He turned to leave quietly. But one of the aliens stopped and looked around, eyes glowing. "Someone's listening," it said. He backed away fast, bumping into a small crate, knocking it down with a loud metallic crash. "Who's there?" a voice shouted. He ran, his body moving faster than it ever did before, like something ancient inside him had activated. He reached the end of the passage and slid into a dark chamber, where strange lights blinked and floated in the air inside. The room stood a large glass pod, cracked and half open. Carved into the base was one word, Obsidian, and next to it his name, not just a soldier, not just a survivor. He was the last piece of a plan long buried, and now he was awake. Asterisk. The nightmare felt too real to be just a dream. He stood in the middle of a ruined city, the ground cracked open, the sky burning red. Bodies lay across the streets, human and alien, all frozen in their last screams. In his hands, He held something glowing black metal, shaped like a heart, pulsing like it was alive. Then a voice echoed through the burning air, loud and sharp. "You did this." He turned around to see his own face staring back at him. "You forgot, but I didn't," the voice whispered. "You are not the hero." He woke up gasping for breath, cold sweat dripping down his face. He sat up fast, his body reacting faster than his mind. For a few seconds, he couldn't tell if he was still dreaming. His hands trembled, his chest rose and fell quickly. But what scared him most was the feeling in his heart. He knew the place in the dream. He had been there, once, a long time ago. Before the coma, the ruined city, the weapon in his hand, even the strange black heart. It wasn't a dream, it was a memory. He stood up and walked to the wall, resting his forehead against the cold surface. The chamber he had found the night before, the glass pod marked obsidian, was real. He had seen his name carved into it with his own eyes. They had used him, made him something else, then locked him away like broken junk. He turned to the door, and this time, he didn't wait for permission. He slammed his hand against the panel. And to his surprise, it opened without resistance. Outside, the hallway was empty, lit by soft green lights running along the walls. He walked with quiet steps, unsure if he was being watched or allowed. The ship or station, or whatever it was, felt too big, too quiet. The few aliens he saw avoided his eyes, turning their heads or walking away quickly. They knew he passed a window, a real one this time, and stopped. Out there in the blackness floated broken pieces of metal, drifting slowly like dead leaves. A shattered satellite, a rusted flag, a half-burnt escape pod. He pressed his hand to the glass, eyes scanning the stars. But something felt wrong. The constellations didn't match. He realized something terrible. He wasn't near Earth. He wasn't even in the same part of space. A voice spoke from behind, gentle but firm. "You weren't supposed to see this yet." He turned and saw Relin standing there, hands clasped in front of him, face unreadable. "I'm not supposed to know anything," he replied sharply. "Isn't that the plan?" Relin sighed and walked beside him, looking out the window as well. "We kept the truth from you not to harm you," he said, "but to protect what's left." "What's left of what?" he asked, voice low and angry. "Earth? Humanity? Or your secrets?" Relin was silent for a long time. Obsidian was created to stop a war. The alien finally said, "But in doing so, it became something worse." "I don't remember starting a war," he snapped. "I remember waking up alone." "You were the core pilot," Relin explained. "Your body was fused with ancient tech, something we found beneath one of your deserts." He stared at him, confused. "What tech?" "No one knows where it came from," Relin said slowly. "But when you linked with it, everything changed. Memories began to flicker behind his eyes, people in suits, machines drilling into the earth, the hum of a device waking up. You bonded with it," Relin said. "The machine chose you. And then what?" Relin looked down. "You lost control." He stepped back, heart racing. "That city, in my dream, was real," Relin said softly. "You burned it, by accident or design we never understood." He sat on the floor, shaking, the images crashing into his head like waves. The screaming, the red sky, the black heart pulsing in his hand. "No one came to save you because they feared you," Relin whispered. "Even your own people." He wanted to scream, to cry, but instead, he laughed, bitter and hollow. "I was just a soldier," he said. "I didn't ask for any of this." "But you survived," Relin replied. "And maybe that means something still." He looked up, eyes hard. "What now?" "There is one last file," Relin said. "It's locked with your voice, your heartbeat, and your DNA." "Where is it?" "In the old ship, the one that brought you here," Relin said. "If you want the full truth, you'll need to go back inside." He stood slowly, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I want everything," he said. "No more lies," Relin nodded, but his voice trembled as he spoke. "Then you must be ready for what you'll find." The ship looked like a grave. It sat deep within the hangar bay, covered in dust and silence. Its hull scarred with burns and black marks that hadn't healed in decades. He stood there, staring at it from the platform above, hands curled into fists at his sides. The moment he saw it, his knees felt weak. His body remembered before his mind did. His breath caught in his throat, and something inside him whispered, "You were born here." Relin stood beside him, eyes fixed on the dark vessel below. "This was Obsidian's nest," the alien said. "You were taken from it only after it went dark." "Went dark?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. "The ship shut itself down the moment you collapsed." Relin explained. "It locked itself, and no one's been able to access it since." His fingers twitched, like something deep under his skin was trying to wake up. Without another word, he walked toward the ship's entrance, his legs shaky but sure. The doors remained closed until he stood right before them. Then with a hiss, the metal split apart and slid open, releasing a breath of stale air and silence. He stepped inside, the lights flickering to life, one by one. As if the ship was remembering him, the corridor curved gently, lit with dim blue lines along the floor. He followed them without thinking, his feet knowing the path even if his mind didn't. Each step brought flashes, voices calling his name. Lights flashing red, alarms screaming, pain across his chest. He reached a sealed room at the end of the hallway. On the door, he saw the old symbol of Earth's military, a silver eagle wrapped in wires and stars. Under it, his name burned into the metal. He placed his hand on the panel, and something sharp pricked his skin. Drawing a single drop of blood, the door opened. Inside was not a control room, not a weapons bay. It was a lab. Screens floated in the air, frozen on files dated decades ago. He stepped forward and the files reacted to him, unlocking one by one. With soft beeps, Relin waited near the doorway, silent, watchful. He touched the nearest screen, and it began to play. A hologram appeared, his own face, younger, eyes full of fire. "This is Subject 01. The recording said, "Testing phase for full integration with Obsidian core begins now." He staggered backward, the voice hitting him like a punch. Screen changed, now showing graphs, body scans, and words like neural fusion, weapon bond, living core. He turned to Relin, voice shaking. "They built me for this." "Yes," Relin replied softly. "You were not just the pilot. You were the heart of the weapon." Another file opened, this one darker, shakier. The room in the video shaking as alarms blared. "Core is unstable." Someone shouted, "He's slipping, pull him out." "No," another voice yelled. "He's locked into the system. We can't disconnect without killing him." The screen cut to static, then silence. He dropped to his knees, chest heavy, mind spinning. "I didn't volunteer," he whispered. "They forced me." "Yes," Relin said. "And then they left you behind." He laughed bitterly, wiping his face with his sleeve. "They feared me," he said. "That's why they hid me. That's why Earth never came back. Because you were too powerful." Relin replied, "Too unpredictable." He stood up, fists shaking. "I want to see the rest." Relin hesitated, then waved a hand toward the center of the room, a circular table lit up, and a final file appeared, marked in red. "Obsidian fail-safe, do not activate." He looked at Relin, who gave the smallest nod. He pressed the file, and the room shifted, light bending around him. He was pulled into a simulation, a memory, not just to watch, but to feel. He stood again in the ruined city, holding the glowing black device, his hands shaking. Behind him were soldiers, shouting, trying to stop him. In front of him, a gate in the sky had opened, massive machines pouring out. Not human, not alien, they were the real enemy. Obsidian had been Earth's last defense against what came from beyond the stars, and it had worked, but at a terrible price. He turned away from the simulation, heart pounding, eyes wide. "I destroyed them," he said, "but I destroyed everything else too." Relin stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You saved the galaxy," he said, "but they chose to bury you instead of thank you." He stared at the flickering files, feeling hollow and full at the same time. They didn't want a hero, he whispered. They wanted to forget. Relin nodded slowly. But now that you're awake, the past won't stay buried. He looked down at his hands. Human flesh mixed with glowing lines. I wasn't just a weapon, he said. I was their last hope, and maybe, Relin added. Still are, the first time he heard the voice. It didn't come from Relin or from any alien nearby. It came from inside the walls of the ship, not through speakers, not through sound, but directly into his head, soft like a whisper, yet impossible to ignore. You are awake, it said, slow and heavy like ancient stone shifting. He froze where he stood, alone in the silent lab, his eyes searching the shadows for something that wasn't there. The floating screens dimmed, lights blinked slower, as if the entire ship had taken a deep breath. He stepped back, heart racing. But the voice came again. You are mine. He stumbled out of the lab, almost running, his boots echoing against the cold metal floors. Relin was already there in the hallway, eyes wide, looking like he'd seen a ghost. You heard it, Relin said quietly, not as a question, but as a fact. He nodded slowly. What was that? The core, Relin answered. The part of the ship that was never ours. The part we could never shut down. It's alive, he whispered, voice shaking. It's inside me. Relin looked down. It always was. The voice didn't speak again, but he felt it watching. Like invisible eyes were tracking every breath he took. Something inside his chest was warm now, not burning, but pulsing, matching the rhythm of the ship itself. He returned to his room, but he didn't rest. His fingers moved on their own, tracing strange symbols into the table's surface, shapes he didn't remember learning. Relin sat across from him, silent, almost afraid to interrupt. After several minutes, the human stopped and looked up. It's speaking through me. It wants something, Relin said. It wants to finish what it started. He stood up suddenly, grabbing the edge of the table. I need to see the records, the real ones, not the ones the council let you keep. Relin hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Then you'll have to go to the archives. What's the risk? He asked, even though he already knew the answer. If they catch you, Relin said, they'll erase you. He left that night, dressed in a dark gray suit that hid his body's glowing veins, his face covered in a plain mask. The archives were located in the deep underbelly of the station, behind sealed gates and guarded towers. But the core guided him. Doors opened where they shouldn't. Lights blinked in patterns that showed him the safest paths. When he reached the heart of the archive chamber, the door was already unlocked. Inside, rows of frozen memory crystals floated in the air, each one glowing faintly. He reached for one labeled simply, Obsidian, Phase 0. The moment he touched it, images flooded his mind. Earth cities preparing for an invasion. Fleets rising into space, leaders arguing behind closed doors, and him chosen, alone, locked inside a black chamber where the machine was waiting. The fusion had not been peaceful. He remembered now, remembered the pain, the screams, the moment. His human body was pulled apart and rebuilt molecule by molecule. But he also remembered what came after: power, speed, clarity. He had become something no one could stop. He dropped the crystal, his body trembling. Behind him, a voice spoke in alarm. Unauthorized presence detected. A guard, armored and armed, stepped into the chamber, weapon raised. Show yourself, the guard ordered. The core reacted faster than he could think. A blast of energy surged through his arm, shooting out toward the guard and knocking the weapon from his hand. He stared at his own fingers, glowing white-hot. He hadn't meant to do it, hadn't known he could do it. The guard ran, and alarms began to ring. Relin's voice echoed in his ear through the COM device. You need to leave now. He ran through the archive halls, but more guards were coming, their weapons humming with energy. He had no plan, no escape, just the core pushing his legs forward, whispering in his mind. I remember them, the core said. They tried. To shut me down. Then don't let them, he replied aloud, surprising even himself. As he reached the edge of the archive zone, the wall beside him exploded open, an old passage only the core knew about. He jumped through it, coughing in the smoke, and found himself in a service tunnel leading back toward the lab. Relin was waiting, holding a medical kit and a small glowing cube. They know, Relin said. You've become their fear again. He looked down at his glowing hands, shaking with power. Then it's time they learn the truth, he said, about what they created. The first bullet didn't hit him. It stopped in the air just inches from his chest, frozen in place like time itself had paused. The second one turned to ash before it reached his shoulder. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just walked forward, slowly, step by step. While the soldiers yelled and retreated in panic, the core wasn't hiding anymore. It wasn't whispering. It was awake, fully awake, and now the entire station could feel it. Lights flickered, walls shook, doors refused to open unless he allowed. He had become the ship's heartbeat, its eyes and voice. From the command deck, the alien general watched the cameras with cold fear in his eyes. He's heading for the transmitter, an officer shouted. If he reaches it, then the whole galaxy will know, the general growled. Stop him, now. But they couldn't, because Obsidian had bonded again, not with circuits, not with wires, but with something more dangerous, with purpose. Relin ran beside him, breath short. Once you reach the transmitter, there's no going back. I know, he said calmly. And that's the point. They reached the lift that led to the high tower, the oldest part of the station, built before the council even existed. He placed his hand on the panel, and the lift rose without a sound. Below them, alarms howled. Voices screamed, weapons charged, but none of it mattered. At the top stood the galactic transmitter, a giant ring of silver coils and blinking lights. It had not been used in years, not since the last universal war, but now it waited, humming softly, almost like it had been waiting for him. He stepped onto the platform, and the core extended wires gently toward the control console. Broadcasting will reach all major planets, Relin said, watching him closely. Even Earth, if it's still listening. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he closed his eyes and let the core connect. Images and data poured into the system, his memories. The truth about Project Obsidian, the real reason he had been buried. He saw the faces of the humans who signed the silence orders, the aliens who helped cover it up. He didn't send hate, he sent facts. He sent what really happened, from beginning to end. And he sent it not as a weapon, but as a witness. The core glowed brighter, the ring humming louder. Down below, forces broke through the last door, weapons aimed at the sky. The alien general screamed. Fire before he speaks, silence him before the lie becomes truth. But before a single shot could be fired, the transmitter lit up, and his voice echoed across space. My name is Leon Hart, he said. I was made into something no one could control. I was forgotten, abandoned, rewritten in history. But I survived. And now I give you the truth. All across space, on ships and stations. In cities and colonies, screens lit up with his face, his voice. Some gasped, some cried, some cursed. But no one looked away, because what he said was real, and every star in the galaxy could feel it. Down below, the soldiers lowered their weapons. Slowly. Some falling to their knees, some simply staring in silence. Relin stood beside him, tears in his eyes. You did it, he whispered. I didn't want revenge, Leon said softly. I wanted to be remembered. The core pulsed once more, then gently shut down the transmitter. It was done. Leon turned, walking down the stairs, past the shocked guards, who no longer dared stop him. The alien general said nothing as Leon passed. His power meant nothing now. The truth had already won in. The days that followed, messages poured in from distant systems. Some offered apologies, others demanded answers. A few even offered Earth coordinates long thought lost. But for Leon, it was never about going back. It was about becoming whole again. He stood alone one night at the observation deck, watching the stars shift slowly across the black sky behind him. Relin spoke softly. "They're calling you the last human weapon." Leon smiled faintly. "I prefer survivor." The stars didn't judge him. And neither did the silence, because now the galaxy knew he was never just a soldier, never just a machine. He was a man who was broken, forgotten, and left in the dark. But when the time came, he didn't destroy, he chose to speak. And in the end, his voice reached further than any weapon ever could.